So the first shot is from my hotel room in Brisbane, the Brisbane River, which has changed a lot since I last saw it. Very good hotel though. This is a trip down memory lane to the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary, which I last visited, I think, in about 1969. It's a few miles upriver. Some beautiful properties on the side, and most of them have boats at the bottom of the garden. That's Miramar 2, the boat I went up on. The last time it was Miramar 1. Only had 2 boats there in something like 80 years. The park's got all sorts of animals, not just koalas. There's reptiles, as you can see, kangaroos, exotic birds, snakes. Emus. I was chased by one of these in 1969. I'm just wondering whether that's a relation. It's got a pretty mean look to him. That's a Tasmanian devil. It's one of the ugliest animals I've ever seen. If you want to pay extra, you can have your photograph taken cuddling a koala. This is one with a handler. This looks like kangaroo smoko. Some young ones. On the Sunday we had a riverboat to cruise on this paddle wheeler, and a 3-course lunch on board, which is excellent. I think there were about 80 of us on board for that. That's all together for a photo shoot as we left the quay. The 3 ensigns, Conway, Worcester, Pangbourne, and I'm on the extreme right on the upper deck. There's a street busker playing a didgeridoo, as you do. This was taken at the Saturday evening dinner. I think we had 105 for that. Very good turnout all round. Then Sunday evening we were invited to a barbecue at the Maritime Museum. We had drinks first on the quarterdeck of HMAS Diamantante. I think I got that right. And they'd laid out tables in the grounds for the barbecue afterwards. That's L'Oreal Williamson and myself, both ex-Portline. Although we'd never met before this weekend, we corresponded on the Vintage Port site. Then I moved down to Sydney. This is the Maritime Museum in Darling Harbour. I went round that submarine, and that's the engine room. That's a replica of Endeavour. She's based permanently at the Maritime Museum now. Next shots are of down below. This is Les and Amy Middleton and their daughter Glenda, friends from Malta who, well, the parents moved out about 4 years ago, Glenda's been out there quite a long time. Now we're in New Zealand, and this is a wharf at Opua. And the next shot is one I took in 1969 of the Port Brisbane alongside that same wharf. This is my cabin in Paihia in Bay of Islands, just across the way from Opua. Beautiful view, better when the tide's in. But and this is the cabin. Mine's the middle one of the upper three there, on the right hand side. There's a better photograph in a minute. That's it there. Very secluded, beautiful spot. And the owner was at school in Opua when John Goddard was the schoolmaster there. I remembered him well. As did John when I mentioned him. I spent a morning at the Waitangi Treaty House grounds. Always wanted to do that. Never made it before. It's where the treaty was signed between the Maoris and the British. A certain Captain Hobson came ashore and signed the treaty, and they've been squabbling over it ever since. This is the ceremonial house. They just had a presentation, hence the Maori women coming out in traditional costume. And that's the inside of the house. And that's the beach where Captain Hobson landed. I'm afraid these photographs have lost a little bit of clarity in converting them to video pad and YouTube. They had a couple of replica Maori war canoes there as well. And this is the Goddard family. So the front row is John, Alice, Elise and Briar, and Elise and Briar's kids Steph and Eddie at the back. I didn't meet Eddie, but I did meet Steph. So we spent the day down at Lake Taupo, and this is the Waikato River coming away from the lake. And these are the famous Hooker Falls. We did a catamaran trip up to just below them, and you can get fairly close with this catamaran, so hence the good shots. And there's some video footage of this as well. And that's John. So after 3 days I left John and headed down towards Wellington and the ferry, but on the way I spent the night at Dave and Rose Huxley Jones's. Dave was my term at Conway, and we had a mini Conway reunion that evening. The guy in the middle is Gordon Wood, who was there at the same time, a couple of years ahead of us. And that's Barrett's Reef, where the Wahine came to grief in 1968. There she is. And I came in there on the Port Brisbane just afterwards, and she was still lying on her side. Loss of 51 lives. It was the worst tragedy in maritime history in New Zealand. So this is the entrance to Marlborough Sound. It was a rough crossing, 47 to 8 all the way over, and Picton's about an hour and a half steam up the Sound. And this is the other ferry coming the other way. So I'm starting to head for the Southern Alps now. That's my hire car. You can see there's not a lot of traffic on the roads there. That's the view from my hotel balcony at Arthur's Pass. Nice little hotel. This is the Otira Gorge Road. It was dedicated by Prince Philip, although he didn't go up there, he did it in Wellington. It's a fairly precarious road in the winter. I was very lucky it had been closed the week before with snow. So down to Lake Tekapo, and this is the Church of the Good Shepherd. I had visited before when I was about 18. That's the inside of the church looking out over Lake Tekapo. Gets its colour obviously from the glacial runoff. Most of the lakes are the same colour. This is a monument to a sheepdog. There's an explanation on the plaque there which you can read on the next shot. So from Lake Tekapo I headed up towards the Hermitage at the top of the road to Mount Cook. That's a view from my balcony. That's the hotel again. Inside the hotel there's a museum dedicated to Sir Edmund Hillary. He did his practices for Everest and for the Transatlantic expedition. These are replicas of two of the vehicles. The previous shot was one of the buses that used to run up to Mount Cook in the old days. And finally the sun came out and I managed to see Mount Cook itself. I managed a helicopter flight on the way down to Littleton and Christchurch the following day. That's taken from the chopper. There's more video footage of that. So we landed just below the summit for a photo shoot and to admire the view. That's the pilot taking a photograph of the other two passengers. That's the Tasman Glacier in the background there, just slightly to the left of centre, just gleaming slightly. So from there I headed down to Christchurch. I actually stayed in Littleton, but this is the Christchurch Air Force Museum. That's DC-3 on the left. I actually flew in one of those on my first trip to New Zealand. That's one of the Oscars that was used on the Vivian Fuchs Transantarctic expedition in, I think it was about 1955. That's a view from my balcony in Littleton, overlooking the harbour, and we used to tie up on that quay there in Port Lyme. Littleton was devastated by the earthquake in 2011. A lot of Littleton still hasn't been rebuilt. My place was alright, but it had a few cracks in it, as you can see. But 2 or 3 houses down, they're still not inhabitable. They're fighting over insurance claims. Littleton was badly damaged Christchurch was badly damaged as well. The main shopping mall was destroyed and they rebuilt it out of containers now. That's Christchurch Cathedral, which they think they'll have to pull down. They don't think they can save it. It's badly damaged. And that's a lunch at the Canterbury Club. Ancient Mariners. I was invited. There were a couple of Port Lyme people that met.